Good afternoon and welcome to From Where We Are, stories of news and culture through the lens of USC and Southern California. I'm Jeanette Fu, coming to you live from Studio B in USC's Annenberg Media Center.
And I'm Drew Richmond. It's Tuesday, April 15th. On today's show, we discuss the intersection of allyship and undocumented students. We discuss the censorship of cartel-inspired music, and we go live from Tommy's Place for the Spring 2025 student debate. All that and more from Where We Are.
2 Russian ballistic missiles attacked the Ukrainian city of Sumy, killing 35 and injuring 117, making it the deadliest attack this year between the two countries. The attack took place when residents were attending church services during Palm Sunday. Russia's foreign minister told a Russian newspaper Monday that Moscow targeted a get-together of Ukrainian military chiefs with their Western counterparts. Ukrainian President Zelensky called for a strong response from the world and said Russia is not only inflicting terror, but also dragging out the war.
Having a hard time finding tax solutions? The IRS has granted an automatic extension of file year 2024 October into October 15th for residents of 13 states affected by natural disasters. However, you must submit Form 4868 by midnight tonight. This extension applies not only to filing your return. Any taxes owed are still due by April 15th to avoid penalties and interest. For more information and to access Form 4868, visit the IRS website at irs.gov.
The federal government announced on Monday to freeze more than $2 billion in grants and $60 million in contracts to Harvard University. More recently, President Trump has threatened Harvard's tax-exempt status. The White House has sent a letter to the university with 10 demands regarding changes in conduct, academics, and what it calls viewpoint diversity. The university's X account said that the university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights. The Joint Task Force aimed to combat anti-Semitism released a statement saying Harvard's response reflects the troubling entitlement mindset that is endemic in our nation's most prestigious universities and colleges. That federal investment does not come with the responsibility to uphold civil rights laws.
As the ground began to shake at 10:08 a.m. Monday, elephants at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park instinctively formed an alert circle. The alert circle is a protective formation where adult elephants circle around their young to shield them from potential threats. The threats, a 5.2 magnitude earthquake centered near Julian in San Diego County, was felt across Southern California, including here in Los Angeles. Fortunately, no injuries or significant damages were reported.
2 teenage boys shot 3 people near a bus stop in Exposition Park on Monday. LAPD was called to the corner of Vermont Avenue and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard around 4 p.m. The victims include 2 16-year-old boys who are in stable condition and a woman in her 50s who is in critical condition. An officer suspects the shootings are gang-related. Investigators are looking into a motive, but currently no further details are known.
The Trump administration enacted a policy last week that calls for undocumented people in the U.S. to register themselves with the federal government. Today, leaders of various immigrants' rights groups across the country held a press event to discuss the order and what it means for undocumented immigrants. Alyssa Picatello has more on the story.
A federal judge upheld the Trump administration's requirement for undocumented immigrants to register themselves as such with the federal government and to carry registration documents. This policy mirrors tactics used in the U.S. during World War II and post 9/11. Today, 5 leaders from immigrant rights organizations across the country spoke in a virtual press event. They shared their disapproval. Murad Awade is the president and CEO of the New York Immigration Coalition and a co-chair of the Fair Immigration Reform Movement, or FIRM.
This rule echoes some of the darkest chapters in the U.S. and global history and is reminiscent of race and nationally based registration systems that have been used to criminalize and marginalize entire communities, resulting in internment and concentration camps.
Awade is referring to the Alien Registration Act of 1940, which was enacted during World War II when some immigrants were seen as a threat. Heavy surveillance and fear of immigrant communities eventually led to Japanese Americans being taken to internment camps, Some of those incarcerated there were American citizens. Similar policies also targeted the Muslim community after the terror attacks of 9/11. Non-citizen men aged 16 or older from 25 countries, most of these Muslim majority, were required to register with the U.S. government. Awade fears that the registration process Trump seeks will lead to a surveillance state, referring specifically to the post-9/11 targeting of Muslims in the U.S. He says we must not let history repeat itself. Some of those who spoke expressed skepticism that people who are vulnerable to being deported will willingly sign themselves up for a registry. Nicole Malaku, executive director of the National Partnership for New Americans, described Trump's recent wave of anti-immigrant policies as, quote, a misguided effort. Malaku described the administration as having what she called an insatiable appetite for human suffering. Across the board, these leaders urged Congress to oppose the Trump administration's immigration policies. Tessa Petit is the executive director of the Florida Immigrant Coalition.
We're not at a time of war, and immigrants are not the enemy.
They also encourage undocumented people in America to know their rights and to seek legal guidance. For Annenberg Media, I'm Alyssa Peccatello.
UTSA is USC's undocumented Trojan Student Assembly. Their mission is to create a safe space for undocumented students and their allies. The allies support the rights of undocumented immigrants, but are not undocumented themselves. And recently, UTSA has been examining the intersection of allies and undocumented students. Amy Lopez asked the assistant director of UTSA, Melissa Paz-Flores, about allyship in our current political climate.
I think that allyship is more necessary now than ever, right? It's about having those hard conversations with people, like in higher admin, like other outside authorities, coalitions, right? And I think just how I envision with UTSA next year, I'm really hopeful. I think our org is off to some great beginnings, and we've grown so much since our inception in 2016. But I will say I'm just a little worried because I hear a lot of what's happening with other universities. So I think that just in turn, having people who can be able to share their voices alongside the people who are directly affected is very, very important.
What are some everyday instances in which someone can become an ally, and what should allies be cognizant of?
I think that it's really amplified now more than ever, for sure. And actually, I will say, we've had trainings with our USG, like broader overall team in front of like the executive cabinet and the board. And I think we hit on a few points in which allies can gain some sort of semblance of how to react or respond to certain situations. And I think the first one would be education. So even as AD, I'm not the end all be all. I don't always know what are policies or what's the breaking news every day. But what I am aware of is sort of like understanding, what are some parts of staying educated that I can keep in mind, like if it's following accounts on Instagram, right? Or just thinking about ways in which how to engage healthily with media. I think that's really important, but also just making sure, another point that I'll make is holding space for and making space for students who are directly affected here on campus. The Undocu Plus community is a beautiful mosaic and spectrum of students and individuals here at USC beyond that. And I think that one final point I'll make is just really making sure that you hold empathy for these students. And I think having that education, having that empathy is going to make sure that you are a better ally. Lastly, I'd say that recognizing that we all have room for growth and we all have room to keep fighting and learning, continuously growing. And I think making mistakes is going to be part of the allyship process too. Maybe there is a lack of knowledge on your end, or maybe there are just some other things involved that you just might not be aware of, even your own biases, right? So I think just keeping that in mind, like the empathy, the education, the acknowledging your mistakes are all going to be really important parts of that process.
You have a little bit of time left at UTSA. I know that you're the assistant director for until the end of the school year. So what do you hope to accomplish during the remainder of your time, or what do you want to focus on?
It's been a really beautiful pathway with UTSA, and I joined this org. So I've been involved in the immigrant advocacy space, honestly, since I was a kid. In my final few weeks as assistant director, I would love to continue the fight for an undocumented Trojan Resource Center. We are getting some momentum going. We have a petition actually on our Instagram, which is great. Aside from having the big conversations and the planning and the framework, I would say cultivating that sense of community. Undocu plus individuals feel the most community on 3 levels, which is the interpersonal, which is the individual, and also the systemic. So I'd say that is like really part of sort of my overall vision at UTSA, which is continue fostering that sense of community. Even if I sometimes feel like I can struggle to find spaces, I want to make sure that the spaces for the whole spectrum is really, really supported.
A Mexican norteño band known for its Narco-Corridos song has had its U.S. visas revoked just as it was scheduled to tour here. What is Narco-Corrido? Why does it make people nervous? And what will other musicians suffer the same fate? Here's David Rendon with the story.
2 weeks ago, Los Alegres del Barranco from Sinaloa, Mexico, had their visas revoked. This came shortly after they performed their hit song El del Palenque about the drug lord El Mencho in concert, and prominently projected his image in the background. The band was scheduled to perform in California, Texas, and other U.S. states, but the El Mencho incident cost them their U.S. visas and also drew backlash from the Mexican government. Images of drug lords aside, the narco-corrido genre has long drawn controversy. A narco-corrido is a take on the traditional Mexican corrido, which is a ballad about people or events. In the case of narco-corridos, the people are figures in the drug world. The genre has been criticized for glorifying or promoting criminal activities. It has even been banned from being performed at public events in some Mexican states. As the U.S. revoked visas for Los Alegres del Barranco, Deputy Secretary Christopher Landau said, quote, "The last thing we need is a welcome mat for people to extol criminals and terrorists. With the U.S. now beating the anti-narco-corrido drum, some musicians are worried about potential censorship here."
I feel like eventually it's just going to turn into banning talking about our own experiences and just our life and what we have to deal with.
That's Ezra Rodriguez, a student musician. Rodriguez is worried about the Trump administration's decision to revoke visas affecting other performers, including big names that might be considered narco-corrido adjacent. One such artist is Peso Pluma, whose genre is the popular corrido tumbado, also known as trap corrido. This danceable style incorporates elements of rap and narco-corrido. Peso Pluma is one of the most notable artists in the Latin music world. He's performed at Coachella 3 times, and he's not afraid to embrace narco-corrido themes. One of his biggest hits is El Azul, is a song that is allegedly about the legendary drug kingpin El Chapo Guzman. But this year, during his Coachella performance with Junior H, no narco-corridos were performed. Some have argued that the Trump administration is stifling free speech and violating the First Amendment by punishing people for their music. 90s and what's happening now with glorification of the drug world. Like a familiar Back then, popular groups like NWA were similarly condemned. In 1989, the group's record company even received a letter from the FBI. Reggaeton is another genre that faced government-sponsored criticism. Though the genre started in Panama, it blew up in Puerto Rico's underground scene. In the 90s, police even raided record stores to confiscate reggaeton cassettes and CDs. The music was derided as obscene. It's too soon to know if more narco-corrido artists will be banned from performing in the U.S. But it's not the first time we've seen a government attempt to police music, and it won't be the last. For Annenberg Media, I'm David Rendon.
I'm Drew Richmond. I'm Drew Richmond. We're glad you're with us for it from where we are.
And I'm Jeanette Fu. It's 28 minutes past the hour. Coming up, we go live from Tommy's Place and we hear from an Annenberg Media reporter on how their story came together. Let's head to the Ronald Tudor Campus Center, where students are gathered to watch Trojan Democrats and the U.S. College Republicans square off in a moderated debate. Annenberg Media reporter John Millsap is there live. John, what's going on?
Hi, Jeanette. Tens of students gathered before a blue and red lit stage at Tommy's Place to watch Trojan Democrats and USC College Republicans exchange views. The event is hosted every semester by the USC Political Union and USC Political Student Assembly. Both are nonpartisan organizations that aim to promote political awareness and discussions on campus. This year, The student organizations nominated representatives to debate hot-button issues such as immigration policy, federal education cuts, and executive authority. The energy in the room is tense but celebratory of the discourse. The attendance is free, as well as dinner provided by Rock and Riley's.
You can never go wrong with dinner from Rock and Riley's. Have you had a chance to speak to any of the students, any of the attendees at the debate, and what's the feeling like?
Earlier, I had the chance to speak to Zuri Scott, a sophomore studying business administration. She said she's hoping to learn more about the recently imposed tariffs by the Trump administration. But that's just one of many points of concern. Currently, I'm here with Ariella Grobman, a junior studying international relations. Ariella, what brought you to the debate today?
I was interested to hear about the discourse between Democrats and Republican students and what either side has to kind of say about the new administration and health policies from the Biden administration.
Are there any issues that you're hopeful of finding some answers to?
I'd like to hear what either side has to say about kind of the future of foreign policy, especially from the U.S. side, and how that's going to impact, for example, the cutting of humanitarian aid to different countries across the world, how that's going to impact global citizens.
Every semester, this debate aims to draw participants across the political spectrum. Is there anything that you're hoping to gain from being around such a diverse group of opinions?
I'm just interested to hear hopefully educated people speak about topics that are of great importance to the U.S., but also to the rest of the world.
Well, thank you, Ariella. The debate is scheduled to last until 7 p.m., and the crowd is stirred and ready for action. Sending it back to you, Jeanette.
Sounds good. Thanks, John.
For decades, churches have been a safe space for undocumented immigrants, even providing shelter at times. They were off limits to immigration officials until recently, when the Trump administration changed the rules. With these protections no longer in place, can churches still serve as sanctuaries for undocumented immigrants? Malcolm Caminero has the story.
Churches have been a safe space for undocumented immigrants for decades. During the sanctuary movement of the 1980s, churches played an important role, offering shelter, protection, and help with legal services for Central American refugees fleeing civil war. Today, it's estimated over 800,000 immigrants call LA County home, and President Trump's promised crackdown on immigrants has made them afraid.
It's nerve-wracking. It brings an anxiety that is unexplainable.
That's Wendy Pelera, the senior warden at Holy Faith Episcopal Church. Some members who work with her church are undocumented. Lately, it's become difficult to answer this question.
Our church is a sanctuary.
So it's a yes and no.
Los Angeles is a sanctuary city, meaning local law enforcement is under direction to not help federal immigration officers. But protections for churches have become less clear. Recent administrations prohibited immigration arrests in so-called sensitive locations, such as schools, hospitals, and churches. The Trump administration has rescinded that policy.
ICE officers can come in to our church during our service, and they can potentially come in and intimidate.
Pelera hopes it never comes to that. As ICE agents carry out the president's directive to make more arrests, the church community is finding ways to fight back through information and activism. One recent morning at Pelera's Episcopal Church, parishioners sought answers from a legal expert.
Could I ask, what are the local police doing? Are they staying out of this, or are they helping ICE?
So they can't help ICE, pursuant to state law. They are not.
Answering the questions is Lura Urias, Program Director of Represent LA, a program at the Immigrant Defenders Law Center. The church has been organizing monthly Know Your Rights trainings, and they're designed to help immigrants understand how best to handle encounters with ICE.
And ask them questions like, who are you, right? Like they ask me, who are you, where are you from? No, who are you? You say you're an agent, where's your badge? I want to see your badge. And
and understand their rights as an individual.
Everybody remember, you have the right to remain silent. You do not have to answer any question. Remain calm.
Urias has a history of advocating for legal representation and providing deportation defense to marginalized immigrant communities in California. The training is a way to educate people about their rights regarding ICE. Palero's Episcopal Church partnered with members from a faith-based organization called CLU, or Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, to help orchestrate the trainings. CLU is a faith-based group that strives to mobilize people of different faiths for social justice and immigrant rights. In addition to the trainings, local faith leaders from CLU have helped other churches mobilize their communities to make their voices heard. What you're hearing is the March for Dignity that took place on the first day of March. It included multiple people of various faiths and political backgrounds who came together because they care about the undocumented community. They included people like Jennifer Gutierrez, the executive director of CLU. Gutierrez wants to ensure that undocumented people feel seen and make sure they feel safe within their churches.
They're afraid to even come worship in their churches. And so we wanted to bring out the whole faith community. We wanted to let them know that they are not alone in this struggle.
CLU is part of what's called the Southern California Rapid Response Network, a group of local NGOs that aim to let people know about ICE arrests in their community. They partner with Latino churches around LA to rally support for their congregation as a way to show solidarity.
The whole community of people of faith, Jewish, Muslim, a variety of Christian denominations, Unitarians, etc., we're all with them. And we wanted to show that out here in the street.
For now, the sanctity of churches is at stake. But LA church leaders are doing what they can to continue protecting their communities. Here's Wendy Palera again.
There is hope. You know, we know that churches have played a very big role in immigration. We still have that voice as a sanctuary city, as a church in every state. You still have the right to be able to close the door. It's educating our priests, educating our parishioners. What does that look like? Protecting our most vulnerable individuals, because they are our neighbors.
The safety of undocumented immigrants in the U.S. remains in question for now. But there is hope that educating the community, marching in public spaces, and keeping churches as safe as possible to worship in will help undocumented individuals and their families weather the storm. For Annenberg Media, I'm Malcolm Caminero.
Last week, a federal judge sided with the Trump administration's position allowing immigration agents to enter places of worship, but also noted that so far religious spaces have not been singled out. Joining us now in the studio is reporter Malcolm Caminero. Malcolm, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on, y'all.
Man, no problem. Look, how did this story come together? What inspired you to want to get out in the religious spaces and, see what's going on?
I appreciate you asking. So this story was actually supposed to be for a class, and it is for a class done by our audio director, Leslie Bernstein Rojas. And it's a class where we do different features at different times of the year, different kinds of lengths. So it was a pleasure to be able to work on a longer feature story in this context. But she implores us to do stories that either we really like or we focus on, or stories that are pertinent to our communities. And I come from a Filipino-Dominican background. Both my parents are pretty Catholic to an extent, and they'll go to church every now and then. And I know that historically churches were this kind of safe space, especially for people of mixed status backgrounds or immigrants. And I wanted to do a story on how is this being affected with all the ICE arrests and detainments going on. So that's kind of how I jumped into this story and then got in contact with all my different sources and sort of reported the story out a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing your experiences. We were also wondering, what are some challenges that you encountered in your reporting and how did you overcome them?
So I initially wanted this to be a really personal, human-focused story. Find somebody who has a mixed status background. Maybe they're undocumented. Maybe they have family members who are undocumented. And I was having a bit of trouble finding that person specifically. And that's understandable. Very trying times. People don't necessarily want their name out on papers or on radio stories or just in the media in general. Totally understand that. And just through a few reworks and edits and talking with Professor Leslie, she was like, let's focus this as more of an informational story for people who are trying to know what they should do. So in there, we mentioned know your rights trainings. So for people who may not know exactly what to do when they come in contact with ICE, I was like, hopefully this story can be a little bit of a bridge where people can feel a little more secure and safer in telling ICE agents, hey, don't bother me. I'm going to let this alone and, don't contact me kind of thing. And I feel like within journalism, there's space for both those personal human stories that people can connect with, as long as there's also some of those informational stories that people can kind of gain some insight and information from.
Absolutely. Malcolm, we thank you for your time. We thank you for this story and the information you're sharing to push humanity forward, and we appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all. Thank you very much.
Next week, we'll talk with UTSA's incoming co-executive, Heidi Vasquez. And that's all we have for her on today's From Where We Are. Isaac Vargas and Amy Lopez produced today's show. We had help from Kaylin Rimholt.
Our board operator is Jaden Frank. Our live stream manager is Sela Falcons. And Derek Renfro composed our theme music.
Catch us live on YouTube at Annenberg Radio News, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Subscribe to From Where We Are, wherever you're listening right now. Finally, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Annenberg Radio. I'm Drew Richmond.
And I'm Jeanette Fu. From all of us at Annenberg Radio, wherever you are, we hope you'll join us again for
From Where We Are.
Okay, so Drew, Coachella Week 2 is coming up. Do you have any plans for that?
I ain't making it to Coachella. I'm going to be real. The mosh pits, the large crowd. I'm taking it a little bit to another place. I'm going to an R&B Mary J. Blige concert. I'm looking forward to that. For one, Mary J. Blige is just my childhood crush. But other than that, I can't wait to sing Just Can't Be Without You, Baby. That's what I'm looking forward to. You can have Coachella with the volleyballs and all that loud ruckus. I'm going to keep it classy, R&B, chill.
Sounds good.
Have you ever been to Coachella? What's your favorite concert experience?
I went to Head in the Clouds once. I liked it. It was Coachella adjacent. It's for Asian Americans or just Asians in general. And it was really fun, but I would not go again. It's very, very taxing on the soul and the body. So I'm going to be chilling and just studying for finals now.
All right. Well, have a good night. See you later, Annenberg Radio.